Good evening, everybody. Tonight we got Bill Porter. He's going to show us how to tie xLights into Home Assistant and AI and how to save some money with it. Take it away, Bill.
Oh man. Yes, so my presentation is called A Crash Course into Home Automation and How AI Saves Me Money on My Display. And that seems like clickbait, but it actually did. And I'll explain it and how that's not clickbait as we go through. But first, for those that don't know me, since I've been quiet in the past recent years, I work for the US Navy as an electrical engineer in unmanned systems, which is their fancy word for robots. I'm an all-around geek. I actually started playing with this community back in 2011 with Vixen, even though I didn't own a house yet. The reason I was playing with it is because I actually had Vixen sequences in my wedding outfit and my wife's wedding outfit there, dress and suit. I embedded Vixen sequences and all our stuff had LEDs in it. It was a very geeky wedding. She's also an electrical engineer, so don't think it was just because it was my wedding. It was just our thing. But yes, I do know since 2013, I've owned a house. And as soon as I owned a house, I went crazy with lights since I was already familiar with the industry and the hobby and things like that. So that's a kind of a image of my house and to show you my qualifications as a light show. Some of the things I do at work, apparently can't tell you. Sorry. But the things I can tell you about that I do at work is I do a lot of STEM outreach. And the reason I'm saying this up front is because I suspect I lost about half of you when I said, I'm an engineer, I'm going to teach you something. And I understand that premise. I've had lots of engineers that were terrible teachers in my life. I promise you I'm not one of them, or at least I'm told I'm not one of them. The reason I think I've broken that stereotype for being a bad teacher because I'm an engineer is I've done a lot of STEM. I teach high school students how to solder. I teach high school teachers how to solder and how to teach engineering concepts to high school students. I even did for about 8 years of doing a stage show for elementary schools. I was not Bill Guy, the science guy, but I was Bill Science. So don't get me mad for that trademark. And I'm actually what I do now is I do a lot of international robotics competitions where I'm either the technical director or I'm on the staff that helps design them. One of the ones that I am the technical director for is called Roboboat. It's in Sarasota, Florida every year. Teams them across the world, and I'm the guy on the stage, getting these kids excited about robotics. Anyway, what is AI? Well, there's your definition from Wikipedia or the internet, but we don't have to do that anymore. Why do we have to go to an encyclopedia for a definition? We can just ask the AI chatbot. So I asked the AI chatbot to write me an introduction about using artificial intelligence to enhance pixel-based residential Christmas light displays, and that's what it came up with. I'm not going to sit here and read this. It was interesting. AI is interesting. I'll say that. Maybe it's getting a little scary, depending on your opinion of it. But until we get to Skynet and until it takes over the world, what can we use it for? Because I'm definitely an advocate for using new technologies that makes our lives easier, or as I like to call it, being lazier, if technology lets me be lazier. So what's this class going to do today? We're going to do a quick sprint into some uses of AI in a Christmas display. And when I'm saying AI, there's lots of AI now. There's AI in Photoshop. There's AI in audio, fake audio, things like that. The AI I'm talking about here is the AI that looks at security cameras and tries to figure out what is in the security camera. Am I looking at a picture of a cat? Am I looking at a fish? Am I looking at a human? Am I looking at a car? That's the artificial intelligence we'll be talking about today. Once we can do that, once we have something that can actually tell us what our security cameras are looking at, then what do we do with that information? Well, that's where Home Assistant comes in and automation. And since I promised an hour, I can't do more than an hour. I can't really hold your hand all the way through this process step by step, but I guarantee you by the end of it, if you're new to this, you will at least have an idea of the right questions to ask and not be lost in that regard. Why did I get told to teach this class? Well, that slide was originally written for the Florida Mega Mini. For those that know Ed Smith, I was told to do this. Now I'm just showing. What I did is last year, so this was 2022, I used vision-based artificial intelligence to control my snow machines and outdoor speakers. And for anyone that has ever run a snow machine, you immediately know where I'm going with saves me money. because boy, do those things suck juice down, and boy, is that juice costly. Basically, if there weren't any cars or people watching the display, my snow machines wouldn't go off. There's this money saving part. I calculated that I probably saved about $500 in one season of just snow juice by making sure my snow machines don't go off every time the sequence repeats and there's nobody outside to watch it. Because what was killing me is I'd look out my window and see that no one was there, and there's my snow machines going off, or do you want to build a snowman? And no one was there to enjoy it, and go, yeah, that just cost me $5 for that one sequence. How did I do it? Well, it's complicated. I'm going to break down a lot of the technologies and terminologies I used, and that's part of the education. You get to know what you want here. I was told I can go as long as I want. Oh, don't tell me that. I'll have to get more beer eventually, though. The way I did, so going back to it, the way I did it is not what I would suggest that people do. With a caveat, I'm sort of changing my mind on this, and I'll get to it why. But again, I'm going to focus on what I did, and I'm going to give you another option, and then I'm going to give you a recommendation. Just because it's my recommendation doesn't mean it's for everybody, doesn't mean it's actually the right way for a particular person to do it. It's just from a general view. It's my recommendation one way or the other. Much like xLights and how you build a Christmas light display, there is lots of ways to build a display that all will look the same in the end. This is the same concept, so don't take me at gospel, please. From a high level, I have a camera. My camera points at the street where I expect my viewers to go. So there's the view from the camera on the left. That's an aerial view of my house and where I expect cars to be lined up around that bend to watch my show. The AI will then figure out when a car is there. So there's an example of a car sitting there watching my light display. The AI says I'm 92% confident that's a car. I'm a little bit more confident than that, but hey, I guess there's always a chance it's not a car. A bunch of magic happens, and that's it. That's how you do it. Any questions? This joke's much better when I'm actually teaching this in front of people, because I get responses from the class and belly groans, but obviously that's not the end. All right, so let's break this down. We're going to break this down in a couple parts. Camera and AI, protocols, home automation integration. Those are the three kind of major sections I'm going to go over tonight. And please, I have a chat window up, so don't feel the need to hold back asking questions. If you've got a question, I'll be looking at that chat window. And I can stop and answer the question before you get too far lost. I don't like, if you've ever done my beginner's class at the Florida Mega Mini, I do not like leaving people behind, because then they miss a bunch of stuff while they wait to figure out what their question is. I should probably stop looking over at it anyway. All right, let's do some, come on. Forward thoughts. When you have an appliance in your house that you've bought and it says it's smart, what does smart mean? Like, throw it up in chat, your answer, because I actually want to see what some responses are tonight. What is your definition of a smart appliance? Bonus points if it's funny. Smart means you have to install an app on your phone. Accurate. Connected, connectivity, something controlled. Good answers. Something I cannot figure out. Okay. The opposite of dumb. The icon is mostly blue. It gets good grades. Those are the answers I expected. What I think smart means is it's nothing, really. It's a buzzword. But I will say, some people did guess correct. Bill Porter with a beer in hand. That is smart, yes. It means the device can talk, so I give points for people who said connected, because I agree with that answer, and thus can be controlled by other means. Not every smart device, though, can be controlled by third parties, because no one loves standards. Everyone wants to do their own thing, and everyone wants their own walled garden. I'm looking at you, Apple. The key is to know, for building a smart house, you need to know that. You need to check if I'm standing on an aisle. So, for example, I'll give you a real story. Went to Home Depot. I needed a dehumidifier. My house was too humid. In the aisle of dehumidifiers, there were a couple options for smart. And I actually thought that might be a good idea, because I could hopefully connect it to my Home Assistant. But you kind of have to look to see if the smart device supports being controlled by third parties, because that's where you want, really. And I found the easiest way to figure that out quickly is to Google the name of the smart device and Home Assistant. Now, if you're looking at me going, what the heck is Home Assistant? Don't worry, I'll get to it. But just remember that trick. Google Smart Device Home Assistant and see if you get a lot of yeses or nos as results, and that'll tell you if it's a smart device that's worth having. Some terminology for AI. AI has to be trained. Yeah, it will be another hobby. We'll get to that. Jason's preempting me here. A label is, so when we get to AI, you have to train the AI. How do we train it? Well, we have to label things. Like you saw that picture where it labeled a car. So an AI is trained with a large data set called collection, where it has lots of pictures of cars that are labeled by humans to say this is a car. This concept is called supervised machine learning. When you buy a quote unquote AI powered product like AI security cameras that you can buy nowadays, this has already been done. If you're using an open source project, I'm using an open source project called codeproject.ai that does have models that have already been trained, but you can also add custom models and do custom trainings. You can actually do custom trainings for like the faces of your family. So you could actually have the security camera tag who's in the picture if it can recognize that member of your family by their face because you train the AI to recognize their face. So let's get on with it. First thing I ever did playing with AI and automation in my light show was using my camera to turn on my outdoor speakers. Show of hands, even though I can't see any of them, who has outdoor speakers and who has done those push to listen buttons? Yeah, push to talk, push to listen, or whatever, right? How many times have you gone out or looked out and saw pedestrians watching your show that didn't see the sign for the button and they're just watching it in silence, and you're like, come on, I put the button there, it's lighting up, why aren't you pushing it to actually hear? Because I had that problem. I had a button that was like flashing and I still wouldn't push it half the time. They would just watch from their golf carts. Toddlers always find the button. I guess I don't have a lot of toddlers. So what I decided to do was use the AI in my security cameras to turn on the speakers when the AI recognized a person. And it actually worked out really well. I could literally watch and see people in their cars with the speakers off. And as soon as the car door opened and someone stepped out, the speakers immediately switched on and they could watch from outside their car now instead of being stuck inside their car. So how do I recommend someone does that? Well, first you got to think about things like picking a camera. And by that, I mean, like, does it support Zoom? I don't know, where can you install it on your property? You want to find a camera with a physical zoom so you can frame the image exactly where your audience will be with minimum, and you're doing this to create minimum errors. You want to have the most resolution of the actual area where you expect the objects you want to detect to be, and not have things like digital zoom take away resolution or a bunch of other distracting things in your picture. So a camera with a zoom is highly preferable. And if you're like, what do you mean errors? Well, this is why I wouldn't be too worried about AI taking over the world yet. It's not always right. Like here, it's 55% confident that fence post is a person. Here, it's 51% confident that rock is a person. So lesson learned, during the apocalypse, throw rocks and maybe the robots will think they're people. And then you can run away. And I have a clip I love to share to really explain this, or at least demonstrate it. And all my colleagues that work with AI and robotics thinks this is the funniest part of this movie they've ever seen because of how accurately it portrays in a comedic setting this concept of AI and errors. So if you guys have seen this before, I recommend it. Oh, I probably need to share sound. Hold on. Share sound. Okay, I believe I'm sharing sound.
He's scared.
Why are you clutching that large feral hog like it's a child?
That's not a feral hog. It's Monchi.
What? Is that a dog or... Dog, pig, dog, pig, dog, pig, pig, dog, loaf of bread, system error. Come on, guys, it's a dog.
Yeah, so a lot of colleagues love that part of that movie. Hopefully you guys could hear it. All right, so now you have a camera. Now what? Well, in my case, I already had a camera because I actually was experimenting with reading license plates. So the camera I had framed and picked to read license plates already was great at watching the audience, since that was the same, excuse me, same portion of my street. And I was using a not open source, but very open connectivity DVR program called Blue Iris as my security camera DVR. Lots of community support for integrating projects for AI, free AI image recognition software like DeepStack or Code Project. They have moved to really recommending Code Project. I think now if you download the newest versions of Blue Iris, it just says, hey, do you also want to download AI? And it goes and downloads Code Project for you. Not saying you should go run out and get a certain kind of camera and use this DVR software though. There are other options. This is just one of them. This is the one I use. I'm going back to recommending it more than what I'm about to talk about, only because since this is a more open ecosystem, you have more hackability. Someone trained a model to recognize packages, so that way you can create rules to notify you or turn on a light or something like that if a UPS pulls up to your door with a package. Excuse me. So because it's more open or more configurable, you can have fun with it in those ways. If you just want a camera that can only do humans and cars and nothing else, and you never want to mess with it again, and you just want it to work, I do recommend Ubiquiti. You probably hear everyone recommending Ubiquiti for the networking stuff. They're also good for their cameras and DVR. All their cameras from generation 3 and 4 and 5, I believe, have AI built into the camera itself. It also seamlessly integrates with Home Assistant automatically. You automatically get entries in Home Assistant for like when a camera sees a person, you get a flag. You can go write scripts to do that flag. Unify mentioned take a drink. Okay. Where's Scott? He already gave me crap for that today. It can be pricey, but you're paying for plug and play and just works. But you're also getting something that can't be modified further. I leave it to you guys to pick your poison. Blue Iris is more like xLights. There's learning curves. There's not user friendliness because there's thousands of ways to do something and it just gives you options. Ubiquiti just works, but you burn a bigger hole in your pocket. If you have a Ubiquiti Dream Machine, the rack mounted ones, you already have the security camera NVR. You just got to slide a hard drive in and buy a camera and you're good to go. Why do these security camera systems add AI? Well, excuse me, a good security camera system should alert you when something is wrong, not just record the wrong thing and leave it to you to figure out later that something was wrong. In the past, they used purely motion-based algorithms. And if you ever played with an old security camera trying to do motion alerts, you probably hated it because every time a bag was flying across the screen, you got an alert. Every time a butterfly flew across the screen, you got an alert. So by adding AI, now all those false alerts gets rejected. Only things like, hey, the AI saw a person on your property, here's the alert. Much better security camera system. Which is what I'm talking about here. So now shadows won't generate alerts. Now the AI has to see a person for it to generate an alert. That's why these security camera systems and software have been working hard to add AI. You can set alerts for cars, trucks, cats, dogs. You just have to make sure if you buy something like Ubiquiti, figure out what they can tag up front. I think they can only tag people and cars right now. Like I said with Blue Iris, where you get to play and train or use other people's training models. You can do cats and dogs. You can do cats and dogs at night through night vision cameras. I have it now that I have, if my security cameras see a cat at night, it'll turn on my sprinklers for 10 seconds to spray them to get them to go away. And that also works really well. I got some good footage of cats just going 1,000,000 miles per hour and the kickers kick on and spray them because the AI saw them in my camera. All right, pixel shows and security cameras. Who here has had security cameras capture part of their pixel show and were driven crazy by all the alerts that it mentioned, that it went off about because it was just driven crazy by the motion of the lights? I'm sure there's at least one of you. You're just not listening anymore and not putting it in chat. Okay, someone said, yeah, there we go. Pixel light shows wreak havoc on motion sensing security camera space systems. This will also sort of impact AI-based systems, so this still applies. Try not to have any props in the frame of your audience camera. Try to get your audience camera in such a way that it doesn't actually capture any part of your show. Even with AI, you'll still get a lot of motion alerts and it could cause problems, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Adding AI the hard way for me, this is my lessons learned kind of. Actually, we're going to talk about it now. Motion triggers are what start the AI processing, because you don't want the AI processing every frame of every second that comes in from your security cameras. It'd be very power intensive. So the way these systems work, the way Blue Iris works and the way I suspect other systems work, is they first do basic motion sensing like we've always done for motion when shadows move and things like that. And once that motion is sensed, then it'll start running frames through the AI to see if there's something there. This goes back to the whole pixel light show thing, right? You don't want it thinking there's motion it has to analyze every second of every minute it's trying to watch your show, which is why it still applies to try to make sure your show is not actually in the frame of your camera. I had some tweaking about how many frames are analyzed. It took some trial and error for how long it would analyze frames for before just rejecting the alert. Also, the problem with Blue Iris for connecting it to Home Assistant is that there wasn't just the one way for it to talk to Home Assistant. You sort of had to make up your own. We'll talk about that in a second. Hold on. Blue Iris supports MQTT, but I had to come up with my own scheme. And that means I had to write my own sort of communication structure that we'll go over in a bit. For example, when the AI saw a human, it would say human or car to Blue Iris / the name of the camera that it saw the object and the object key, MQTT topic. Oh, you probably want to know what MQTT is, don't you? I know Jason does. You already told me that. Fine, let's talk about MQTT. Big picture again, right? We have a NVR or a computer running an AI watching your security camera. Hopefully at some point it sees somebody, because it's not after the apocalypse yet. And it just goes, I see something. I see people. Well, MQTT is the way it goes and tells something or someone else about that. Like, I see people is communicated through MQTT to something else. So, deep dive. MQTT stands for Message Queuing Telemetry Transport. It is an extremely simple and lightweight messaging protocol, subscribe and publish, designed for limited devices and networks with high latency, low bandwidth, or unreliable networks. I'm going to explain MQTT to anyone who's old school Windows in a couple of words. You ready? MQTT is basically Windows registry with network access. That's what MQTT is. And yes, that is Ken McMaster and his old school computer nerd type programs. Let's play some word scramble. Broker, MQTT broker. That is the server that contains the MQTT database. Again, think of it as a registry, a Windows registry with keys. Client is any device or system on the network that wants access to that data. Topic is a piece of data, aka the registry key. So for the people that remember Windows registries, think of a topic as the registry key. Publish is the act of setting or changing one of these registry keys or topics. Subscribing is the act of a client informing the broker to tell it when a key or topic has changed. So to use that in practice real quick, you have one MQTT broker server, Windows registry. You have sensors of devices writing data to certain topics or Windows registry keys. And you've got other pieces of hardware like computers that have subscribed to the same data, so that when a sensor publishes a value, the broker will then tell that computer that value has changed. Jason, are you an MQTT expert now? Listening to #. Not sure what that means, but okay. So applying that to what we were talking about here, I had to set up a broker, an MQTT broker. I would have Blue Iris publish some of the topics, aka would set Blue Iris / street camera / detect human to true. I would have to have some automation system subscribe to the same topic to get notified when that happens. And then that home automation system would turn on my speakers. That's the plan. Oh, but now we got to talk about the home automation system, don't we? You guys are very needy. All right, so we're adding to our logical flow for those visual people. We have our AI watching the camera, speaking MQTT. It's going to speak to Home Assistant, which is what we're going to talk about in a second. Home Assistant controls a plug. The plug turns on my speakers. So here's the whole system level diagram of my magical auto turning on speakers whenever someone walked up to my light show machine. Home Assistant is the FPP of home automation. It is literally the best thing I've ever seen. It is a super steep learning curve, but man, once you get past that learning curve, the possibilities are endless. We'll talk about some of the crazy ones I've come up with so far to see if I can spark some ideas in your head. But you literally can just install this in a Raspberry Pi. Yes, it's something else that needs a Raspberry Pi. I actually have mine running in a virtual machine now, running on a server, so I wouldn't have to tie up a Pi with it. But it is an open source, community-driven home automation hub. It connects all the things. So all the things that we have that are smart, aka can talk or communicate, now are in one place. And they're in one place that supports things like scripting or automations that say, when I walk through the door, turn on my lights, or if it's 5 o'clock and there's motion in the kitchen, turn on the oven, or something like that. Or like when a certain MQTT topic changes, turn on my Yamaha smart stereo in my garage. Ah, there's the last piece. Hopefully that just clicked for some people. Once again, though, the learning curve is real steep. For example, the one that I got hung up on in my early days was I was trying to write my first script and I just wanted to turn on a light. And I'm like, all right, the action I want to do turn on light. And why is that not an option for actions? And what it was is I had to pick as my action to call a service. And then I had to search the services. And I needed the service turn on. And then when that was populated, then I could go pick out the light that I wanted to turn on. It is very Googleable, though. Literally anything you get stuck on a Home Assistant, you can Google. Okay, I guess I'm supposed to show you things now. Let's see. Did I mention I'm tired? Yeah, let's end the slideshow. Yeah. Here is my Home Assistant. I'm using another monitor to show this to you guys. Some of the ones related to my light shows. So like here's my pedestrian turn on sound. The trigger, aka what starts this script, is when an MQTT message is received. Obviously that's when Blue Iris sets detection to person, because that's when I want my sound to be on. I set some conditions. Conditions should be self-explanatory. I wanted to make sure it would actually only turn on my stereo when I expected my show to be running by time, but then I disabled that. Why? Because, well, I can integrate Home Assistant directly into FPP too. So I had my condition to confirm my FPP is playing. So that means this whole automation would only happen if it saw FPP playing. And then it would turn on my speakers. Front yard speakers would turn on. It would wait for 10 minutes, and then it would turn them off. And then I set up the mode that every time the camera would see a person, every time the AI was triggered and saw a person again, it would reset this running script. That means it wouldn't actually stay on for 10 minutes. It would stay on for as long as a person was there, plus 10 minutes. Because every time a person would be viewed by the AI, it would reset that clock, basically. Oddly, this was not my most useful automation out of the bat. My most useful automation for my light show was these two things. When FPP Master changes to playing, I turn off my security lights and my driveway lights and my front entrance. This makes my front yard dark. When my light show stops, hold on. When FPP changes to idle, meaning no longer playing, then I would turn on my security lights, my driveway lights, and my front entrance light. What what ended up making this one of the most useful things I've ever done with Home Assistant and my light show is inevitably I was out there fixing a prop or trying to find on a prop or a pixel was dead, and being able to, I was already on my phone getting FPP to stop or start playing, but now every time I got the sequence to stop playing, all my lights came on so I could see what I was doing. I would make a fix, plug it in a different way, hit play on FPP again, and all my lights would turn off so the light show looked good. Something wasn't right, I hit stop in FPP, all my lights came on so I could see in the grass what I was doing without a flashlight, plug the prop back in, start the show again, all the lights turned off. That ended up being one of the most useful things I've ever done, because man, was it nice to just be out there in my grass going, stop show, all the lights came on, I could see what I was doing, start show, all the lights turned off, now the show looks good. I didn't even intend to do this. I only wrote this just to like not have to use timers to turn my lights on or off when the light show was running or not running. But it ended up being a surprisingly super helpful function that by connection, by home automation, if FPP was stopped, my lights turned on. If FPP was running, my lights turned off. Super useful. One of the ones that got a lot of attention when I first did this in Orlando, let's see. I don't know where it actually is. TV. If my Roomba tries to run while I'm watching TV, this will shut off my Roomba. Let's see. So when my TV turns on, I turn off my smart humidifier, because my smart humidifier actually makes a lot of noise and I don't want that noise in my living room. I turn off some of the lights in my kitchen because they create glare on the TV when you're watching TV. And if my Roomba is cleaning, aka vacuuming and making noise, it'll stop. It'll pause. And when I turn off my TV, it'll resume. So just to be able to sit down on my couch and go, turn on TV, lights dim behind me, the Roomba stops making noise, watch my show, turn off TV again, the Roomba resumes cleaning so the wife doesn't yell at me. Super nice home automation. So that's what Home Assistant does. It lets you create all these rules once everything's talking to each other to do things to automate your house. So let's go back to the show. From current slide. Okay, there we go. Okay, you're probably still upset with me though. You were promised a money-saving tip. I sort of already spilled the beans, but yeah, it's about my snow machine. Snow machines were a huge flippin' hit when I added them last year. I have 6 Christmas songs. I don't have a lot of songs. 2 of the songs, I wanted the snow machines to come on for like 30 seconds. One of them was, Do You Want to Build a Snowman? The other one was some other Christmas song that involves snow. Real quick, though, I found the flaw with them. I was using $25 a day in fluid, which I calculated up to $800 a season. It's expensive. Kids loved it, run out of their cars. I live in Florida. They don't see snow in Florida. So, like, this was one of their best days of their lives. First, they got to see cool lights, and then suddenly it snowed in Florida. So this was my plan to save me money with that snow machines. Home Assistant would read what sequence was playing on FPP. Yeah, it can do that. It can actually see what sequence is currently playing from FPP. If it's, do you want to build a snowman? Then publish. Okay, so if it was, do you want to build a snowman? What Home Assistant would do, it would publish something that Blue Iris was looking for. And that would force it to run the AI again. Remember we talked about the AI is only triggered by motion? Well, in this case, I didn't want to wait for motion to trigger it. I wanted to force the AI to analyze a couple of frames and tell me if somebody was out there in front of my light show. So the first thing that had to happen was Home Assistant read FPP. Hey, right now, do you want to build a snowman's playing? It tells Blue Iris to process a couple frames. If Blue Iris sees a human or a vehicle, it would then publish the response back saying human detected. Home Assistant would see the new topic and activate a smart plug, your basic like $20 plug-in Wi-Fi smart plug that my snow machines are plugged into. This is what it looked like in code. I don't expect you to memorize this. There won't be a test. This is just an example of what things look like in Home Assistant. But again, you read it from the trigger. When FPP media title changes to, do you want to build a snowman? Publish, let the AI process, check the MQTT message back if it's true. Turn on the appliance module, let it run for 60 seconds, turn it off. Home Assistant lets you write scripts in both a graphical and a text-based YAML language. So on the left is the graphical, on the right is the YAML. And this is an example. This is the end of that song. There's no one out there but me, so I'm actually the human that's about to trigger it. But this is one of the sequences that would activate the snow machine. So in a couple seconds now, you'll see the snow machine go off. I know it didn't look like much, but what you just saw was my home automation running. The only reason the snow machines went off is because that sequence came up in the playlist, plus the AI processed the video camera and saw me standing there, and it ran the snow machines. That is just what happened there. I will say I never optimized the timing. If you would want tighter timing, you can probably get it. If you want it in the first couple seconds of the song versus the first 7 seconds, you can probably get it there. I was fine with that delay, so I didn't try anything better. As another way to do this, maybe you have FPP or xLights or some controller already activating the snow machines built into it. Instead of changing that, you could come up with a device to just gate, aka block, allow that power to get to the snow machines, and just use the AI to gate the effect, but the effect still be triggered by timing of the sequence itself. Hold on, I need to take a break. I'm getting my tongue tied. We already talked about some useful automations. I am a crazy nerd, if you haven't figured this out already. I built the box on the left that actually controls everything about my pool, including 2 sources of heating for the pool. I basically optimized solar control valves for controlling the flow of water to only go to the solar pads when it made sense. Because the problem with the solar pool heating pads is if you send water up there and it's cloudy and cold, they actually will act like radiators and you will lose heat instead of gaining it. So I tied in weather station data that saw my cloud cover to direct when or when not to send pool water up to my roof pads, depending on whether or not they'd actually get heat or lose heat. I would also control that heat pump you can see in the picture on the right to add supplementary heat to maintain the temperature in my pool to what my wife and kids like, but only in the most energy efficient way possible so I didn't have a crazy electric bill. That was a great use of automation after I built that control box. All that control box is just a bunch of relays. It's an ESP8266 relay board that I bought off Amazon for 20 bucks. You flash it with what's called Tasmodo, which is an open source firmware for it that integrates with Home Assistant, integrates with Home Assistant through MQTT, because MQTT is everywhere. It's why you got to learn it. And that just gives Home Assistant the ability to flip four relays on and off in real time. And then I wrote the scripts to actually do all this automation from weather station data, weather forecast data, things like that. Like I already showed you, I had my smart dehumidifier turn off automatically when I turned my TV off. This was accomplished by the fact that I had a smart home theater receiver. I love most models of Yamahas for being smart. They have a very compatible smart system that's very nice. They'll integrate directly with the A-word assistant that I can't say because I have one on my desk. And you can actually have them be the audio source. So the A-word device in your living room, when you ask her to play music, you could set it so she doesn't actually play the music through a crappy little speaker. She turns on your Yamaha and plays it through your Yamaha with your good expensive speakers. I love Yamaha for that, which is why I have one in my garage too. And that's actually what I use for my light show sound. It's Zone B on that Yamaha. And the Yamaha I just plug into my network. Home Assistant sees it right away. It adds Zone A and Zone B as media sources, and that's how I controlled it with my script for my Home Assistant. Say Alexa. Apparently you can say Alexa. She didn't activate. So there you go. Some of the helpful things I did around my house. I have security cameras all around my house, but I don't have motion lights. But I do have lights with smart switches. So now that I have integrations, I made all the lights around my house be motion activated by AI, since without having to go replace them with motion sensing lights. Basically, if the camera in my side yard sees a human and the AI registers that, then my lights in my side yard come on. So I can walk all the way around my house and the lights will keep coming on as I walk into the room without having to have replaced my lights with motion sensing lights. If any window in my house is opened, my air conditioner turns off automatically. No more will my kids run up my electric bill because they opened a window and didn't tell me. Because as soon as any window is open, the AC turns off. You close the window again, the AC turns on. I actually did that through my alarm system, which is what you saw me working on that Facebook post today. Because of Ken, he talked me into buying this alarm adapter a long time ago. Envision or something, Envision or whatever, has a home automation integration with Home Assistant. Now every alarm contact in my house is a sensor in my Home Assistant. So my Home Assistant can see when a window's opened through my alarm contact, through my ADT alarm with that dongle on it. Yeah, so Jason's saying he's going to do that automation. He's got to get more reliable door window sensors. I didn't have to do it because I already had an ADT alarm system that I wasn't paying for anymore. I controlled the code for it. So it was just an alarm system that wasn't monitored. But since I added that little dongle to it, now all the existing contacts and all the windows work through Home Assistant. Oh yeah. This was one of my hurricane trophies from the last hurricane we had that was real bad. So that's another example of an automation. When I go back in my backyard, my hurricane trophy turns on and runs for me. And when I leave my backyard, it turns off. Yeah, Cat 5 hurricanes, not recommended. Basically, yeah, once everything can be controlled in one place, the possibilities of how you mix the control or make one thing work off something else are endless. I've heard about this. Some of the things I've heard about, and I've actually sort of played with one a little bit. Train a model to detect the mail truck only. Like you can teach the AI to only see USPS trucks or UPS trucks or FedEx trucks only. And when it sees one of those, get a notification on your phone, hey, mail was delivered. You can train models for your faces. So like you can almost build your own multi-factor authentication to open your smart lock in your house. It's kind of one of the things I've been playing with or wanting to do. Like if my phone is geofenced and if the doorbell camera recognizes my face, go ahead and open the door for me, kind of thing. I'm sure some of you are like freaking out about the security implications of that. I got it. Technically, my smart deadbolt is on purpose not connected to anything because it's Bluetooth only, and it's only Bluetooth so I can set codes because it's a cipher lock, not actually an integrated lock. That's because I sort of agree there should be some things that aren't on the internet. I'm also of the opinion that my security system is going to record you. If you really wanted to get in my house anyway, you could just kick through my doors. I don't know. Maybe one day I will replace my deadbolt with one that's actually Wi-Fi that Home Assistant can talk to. And then I can play around with that multi-factor self-undeadbolting code. And that finally is the real end of my presentation. That's probably the official presentation. So I'll probably open up the floor to questions for my official presentation. I want to show you some new things I've been playing with. Any questions? Oh, I've lost like 5 people. I guess that was boring. Or maybe there's actually no one left because there's no one asking questions.
Anybody with questions?
Well, I was typing, but then the chat went away. There it is. I might as well jump in. So regarding the AI with the cameras, so I have Real Link cameras going to a Real Link in VR. Very happy with those. I know that you can connect them in Home Assistant. I just haven't yet, but I think there's a way to do it. Not that I'm asking for the way. It's more of a if you can. But if you already have existing camera systems, can you like offload that AI processing to something else, a Docker, something in Home Assistant?
The answer is yes. There are people that have done the AI processing directly in Home Assistant within whatever cameras you can get to talk to Home Assistant. I think there is. I haven't looked into it because I haven't needed to because my server itself does it. I have to imagine that either it hits the Home Assistant, the Raspberry Pi hard for processing, or it's something that you do somewhere else. But I do believe, yes, there are tutorials on how to process any image source in Home Assistant to try to get the AI recognition out of it.
Yeah, I've heard they have like those coral chips, like that USB coral chips or something like that kind of offload a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I guess it's possible. So you don't have to go out and buy a whole new system.
My AI is processed on a NVIDIA A5000 or something like not the super expensive one, but the one just below it, because I'm crazy.
So what I missed it. What are you using to detect faces? Is it AI in Home Assistant, or is it some other AI service or software?
The AI processing itself is called Code Project AI. It's just the AI engine itself. It integrates with my security camera system NVR called Blue Iris. That actually is what my cameras feed into, and then Blue Iris will API call the Code Project.ai code to do the processing of faces or models and things like that.
So the code project is open source or free, or?
It is open source and it is free, but it's just an AI engine. It's not like it has, plug-in camera here kind of things. On its own, it's not super useful. You need some other thing to integrate in it with your camera. In my case, it was the code called Blue Iris, which was my security camera DVR software. It was what connected to Home Assistant, Code Project to actually do the processing. That's kind of going back to repeating my presentation, though. So if you kind of missed it, maybe look at the recording. Or maybe I did a bad job explaining that. Not any sort of camera that does, like Paul's saying, supports the protocol to stream video to other devices, which most do. You can then have whatever you stream it to do the AI processing. So like I was telling Jason, I believe, is yes, you could, I believe there are tutorials out there for setting up the AI processing in Home Assistant itself to get information out of what your cameras are showing, and it probably would support most cameras like Night Owl, which I haven't heard before. Any other questions?
Night Owl are the like Costco BJ's camera kits.
Okay. Got it. Work with what you got, but if you ever want to install a new system or install your first system, I highly recommend looking at Unify or Ubiquity over anything you get at Costco. Are you using just MQTT to get data from FPP to Home Assistant? Okay, good point. It's one of the things I wanted to demonstrate, so we'll do that now. So I just wanted to show you sort of like how things talk to each other in real time thing. Like, this is Home Assistant on the left. This is FPP on the right. I can actually see FPP in Home Assistant. It can actually do things like say, hey, go play my Christmas playlist, please. And you'll notice over here in FPP, it's automatically playing Christmas now. And you'll notice Home Assistant sees that and says, right now, Christmas Every Day is playing. If I stop it in FPP, it stops in Home Assistant. So they're talking to each other. And I believe part of it is MQTT, but the way I got it to look pretty in Home Assistant is I installed a third-party plugin. And I guess we'll do a deep dive in Home Assistant real quick. The way Home Assistant works is the devices in your house, you have to install what are more or less drivers for them. But they don't call them drivers, they call them integrations. For example, all my smart light switches are Insteon, so there's a driver or integration for it. There's the driver for my dehumidifier. Here's the driver for my sprinklers. Here's the driver for my Z-Wave, Unify, Tasmodo. There's Yamaha that talks to my Yamaha stuff. So when you see integrations, think drivers. These are the drivers I have to install to get the connections to work to my actual hardware devices. Now, the first way people end up doing FPP is they'll just configure MQTT to send commands back and forth. What I did is I installed first of all, I installed something called Hacks. To be clear, everything in this settings integrations page, these are the official drivers of Home Assistant. Home Assistant is open source. We can do things more than official. We could do user contributed. Hacks is the Home Assistant community store, I think, or something. That adds another tab that adds more integrations that aren't official integrations. These are driver, integration/drivers that other people have just written for their own Home Assistant to make it better. And someone wrote one for Falcon Player. I don't recognize the name. I'm pretty certain I have a better link that I'll share in chat in a bit for the correct link for this. But this home FPP driver, aka integration, is what gave me this nice player widget that talks to FPP. There are ways to turn around, integrate FPP back into Home Assistant other ways as well. You can go into FPP and you can install its Home Assistant driver or plugin. Where's plugin? Home Assistant. And what you can do is you can pick models and tell it to publish that model back to Home Assistant as something Home Assistant can control. So if you have pixel landscape lights and you want them controlled by Home Assistant for just being residential lights, even when a light show is not running, you could go pick in FPP to say, please publish this set of lights to Home Assistant, and they will show up in Home Assistant as a light that you then can write automations for it, like, hey, it's 6 o'clock at night, there's no light show running, turn on the pixel landscape lights though to just light up my house. So there's a couple ways you can do back and forth between FPP and Home Assistant, depending on what you want to do. I was going to show you one more integration in real time. I was going to show, okay, so I'm not sure you get anything meaningful from this. Maybe you'll just think it's cool. So I'm going to start the light show. So FPP shows it running. So, excuse me, Home Assistant sees FPP running now. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to run out like an idiot in front of my house, but I can cheat and make the security camera software, send the message anyway. And let's see if it actually works and turns on my speakers. So I'm going to say, hey, right now the street sees a person. And boom, see this just turned blue? My front yard speakers just turned on because my security camera DVR reported someone was outside my house. It checked to make sure that FPP was playing, so it turned on my speakers. If I turn off my speakers again and go ahead and stop FPP, and I'll tell it to send the same message again. Person. Front yard speakers did not turn on. So we can actually see this happening. Let's see if I can see the. There's my lights turning on because my light show ended. Automations, light show. Traces. Let's see if it captured this trace. So it got to here. FPP player playing false, so it ended this logical path. This is called a trace. This is the log of what happened and why, which when you get to really complicated integrations is your way to debug it. So this very last time that this integration was called, it got to here where it tested FPP. Playing was false, so it did not continue through to turn on my speakers. We go one back, if you look at the path now, when it got to here, the result was true, so it actually went and turned on my speakers and started waiting. So this is another part of Home Assistant I just showed you real quick, where you can see when it tested FPP is playing as true, it finished that path. When I did it again as false, it did not finish the path, it ended there. But yeah, so that's just an example of all the gears and connections turning and making everything happen right off the bat. Any specific cameras in the Unify Protect lineup that are needed to use UDM Pro and this AI Detect. If you have a UDM Pro, who is this? Alex, so do you have the rack mount one, right?
Yep. And I have the camera, and I have cameras around the house and all of that set up.
Oh, so you already have a bunch of cameras. So what
Yes,
gen
sir.
cameras do you have?
G3 and G4s. And
Yeah, those all work. So if you install Home Assistant, you'll see a pop-up in Home Assistant saying, "Hey, we detect Unify cameras. Would you like to add it?" And you'll click yes, and then you'll see all your cameras in Home Assistant, and then you'll get a bunch of entries in those cameras for like, does it detect a person? So since you already have that, all you have to do is install Home Assistant on a Pi, and you're good to go. You now have a way to have a camera recognize a person, go through Home Assistant, and make something happen with FPP if you wanted to.
Nice. Yeah, I have Home Assistant on my Synology, but I haven't used it in a couple of years, so maybe I'll dust that off. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, so you're sitting pretty because you got everything you need. You just got to have it configured and playing nicely. All right, more questions.
Any other questions for Bill? Well, Bill, I want to thank you for showing up. It was a very interesting topic, and probably a bunch of people want to ask you for more support on it.
I'm sure. I'll hang around for a bit while the beer's still cold and the wife is still happy. I should probably check on her.